The Dowler case, there's a lot of things wrong with this case. There's a lot of things unanswered, all the way through from what happened, even down to the phone hacking. There's a lot of things that are never going to be known. All we can do is have our own opinions and think what possibly could have happened. Levi Belfield, I think he was already under surveillance before this happened. I think the police knew that he was committing crimes. Levi Belfield, he was a police informant. He was a known police informant. I think that's why they didn't act straight away, because he was sort of giving them information about stuff. I think most of the stuff that he was involved in was terrible stuff, sickening stuff. That he was into some dodgy stuff. But what I think happened is my opinion alone, and it's just a theory. The basic plan was she left a note. She was going to run away. So the previous night she left a note. I think that Millie had already had interactions with Belfield before all this happened. I think he was well known to Millie. I think she sort of knew him way before, or possibly months before she went missing. And she'd had enough at home, whatever the reason was. She had enough, whether it was her own life or whether she thought she was going to run away and be with somebody else, or just run away and start a life somewhere else. Whatever the reason was, it was because she needed to get away. Don't know if it was from her own life. So on the day, she already planned to get off at that train station. That wasn't her stop, it was the one after it, the one that was near Belfield's flat. Turns the corner on the opposite side to Belfield's flat, starts walking up the road. The bus stop is opposite Millie, on the other side of the road, the same side as Belfield's flat, a bit further down. The friend at the bus stop, which was her sister's friend apparently, sees Millie walking up. At this point, I think Millie's thinking, oh no, my friend's going to see me where I am. And because I'm running away, I don't want her to see me which way I'm going. So as the friend gets on the bus and pulls away, Millie crosses back over towards Belfield's flat complex. This is why the friend never seen Millie afterwards. Then Millie just walks round, normal as anything, into Belfield's flat. The reason that nobody's seen her or nobody thought anything of it because there was school children at that time going home from school. It was nothing out of the ordinary to see children coming home from school at that time of day. Whether it be a bit later or not, there was always school children between them hours going home into the flats, around them areas, catching the buses. So nothing would have seemed out of place. The reason that nobody seen Belfield out there was because he weren't out there. He was actually in his flat. So Millie goes round to the Belfield's flat. He lets her in. She tells him, I've run away. Now Belfield, he was under surveillance for some other crimes that he'd been committing. And maybe then, when she told him that she'd run away and left a note, she probably told him that she'd seen a friend at the bus stop. And I think this is when Belfield got Millie to ring home saying she was going to be late. Belfield knew this was going to bring it on top for him, with all the other crimes he'd been committing, whether the police knew about him or not. He knew that this was going to bring it on top for him. So he knew at this point he had to get rid of her, by whatever means. Whether he took her to someone else's flat to get her out of his flat, but he knew at some point, by the time the family had read the note that she was going to run away, that he only had a few hours to either move her or take her somewhere else and have her put somewhere else where she could be away from his flat, because he knew once the family had read the note, they would be looking for her. And he knew it would be easy to track Millie to where he lived. Whatever he did, he got her out of the flat. So he either moved her to someone else's place or somewhere which was out of the way. I don't think that he unalived her straight away. I think he, in my opinion, I think he actually unalived her with somebody else at the location where her body was found, as there was a report that 2 men were seen in that area with a young girl walking, which leads me to believe that Millie was still alive at that time. She went missing on the 21st of March 2002 and wasn't found till 6 months later. In my opinion, there's got to be other people that know something. Levi Belfield, he was a well-known police informant, so he probably had some communication with the police where they told him off the record that he was being monitored. I think Belfield knew a lot of things about the police, getting up to stuff that he'd arranged for them. When it comes down to the fact that the News of the World afterwards reckons that they hacked into the phone after she went missing, I think this is bullshit. I think they was already onto Belfield and his games and what he was up to. I think he was hacked before that. Not just hacked, I think he was tapped. I think they were listening into his phone calls and possibly listening in, and they already knew he was already in contact with Millie before all this happened. I think they were tapping both his and Millie's phone and anyone else he was having interactions with, and they probably found out that he was also contacting some of their police officers, actively interacting with Belfield and his arrangements, what he'd set up. I think they was tapping the phones, because if you go and have a look at some of the stories that you get from it, they had live phone conversations recorded. The only way you can get live recordings is by intercepting phone calls. Now, the way they tapped into the phones is by doing something called a middleman attack. It's where they have a device. These devices was made for the military and intelligence services, for surveillance and intelligence. These devices, they work in 2 ways. They work in a passive and an active. I'm going to try and say it in layman's terms, but basically all it is it's a device called a stingray. A stingray device mimics the phone tower by putting out a stronger signal than the phone tower. Obviously the phones weren't as advanced as they are now, but even now, to this day, these devices can tap and hack any phone. Constantly your phone is searching out for a stronger signal, and it latches on to the strongest signal. So basically the middleman attack is where the stinger device creates a signal mimicking the phone tower. Then your phone connects to the mimicked device thinking it's the tower. So any interactions you have with this device, it can record live recordings, it can record anything you do on your phone. It can get the data off your phone. You think your phone's safe with encryptions, it's not, because the stinger device, well, it's a stingray device, basically it gets the encryption key off your phone. They work in various ways how they get the phone in the first place. They either have the phone number or the electronic serial numbers of the phone beforehand, or even if they they ain't got them, the actual device can get the information of the targeted device in the first place. I think that's the way that the news of the world would send their surveillance people out to the people around the areas where the people they were targeting, and use one of these devices and record all their conversations. But going to back what I first said, they already knew about Belfield, and they already knew about Millie. This is why nobody's seen Belfield at the actual location where she went missing, because he wasn't out there. He was already in his flat. Whether Millie Dowler actually was coerced into leaving, or she did it on her own, we'll never know, I suppose. But then you've got to ask yourself, when it all became uncovered by the family, when they realised that they couldn't get through to her because the messages on her phone were full up, and then one day when they were searching for her, they decided to message her, and they could actually get a message onto her phone, and so that's when the family realised that she might be still alive. But little did they know that the phone had been tapped into and hacked. So the news of the world was deleting all the messages, and it seemed to the family that she'd actually opened the messages and listened to them, when in reality it was the fact that she'd been hacked, and the news of the world had deleted the messages so they could listen to the other messages coming through. And I think the whole scandal of the whole scandal of the news of the world and everything that happened was, in my personal opinion, is that by the time the police had got involved and they said to the news of the world, you're going to get done for hacking and tapping, then the news of the world said to them, or possibly had something in their records and on their tapping and hacking recordings, on their recordings they had something that involved police officers. And this is why none of the full evidence came out, and most of it got destroyed. But it would have been an even bigger scandal than what it actually was if the whole truth had come out. And that's why they was able to get rid of it all, get rid of the newspaper, get rid of all the recordings and any evidence they had. They probably uncovered a lot more things than they actually made public, which involved a lot of high profile people maybe. And they probably didn't want that coming out, because it involved some elites that were also involved in the whole scandal.